So I was just sitting down editing this video and realized how long it's going to be. So I've got to apologize. This is a long video, but I tell you, there's some good content in there. And another thing I can tell you is if you are just now looking into getting into self-filming, one piece of advice that I would tell everybody, don't do it. I know it sounds crazy, but seriously, there's a lot of work involved. And although it's rewarding, if you're not committed to it, don't bother starting, because there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of gear you end up spending, and a lot of gear you end up lugging. So that is my number one thing that I tell people. Don't do it, but if you do it and you really enjoy it, stick with it. It's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun on this journey. So hopefully you guys get something out of this video. Well, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be looking at all sorts of different ways that you can self-film. From LidCams to GoPros, to just like a Canon Rebel, to a Sony AX53, to just your plain old cell phone. And there's pros and cons, and there's a place for every one of these things. And today we're going to talk about some of these things from kind of a beginner's standpoint. I've been filming for a couple of years, and I've used every single one of these cameras while filming hunts, while filming, making YouTube videos. And I just want to cover some of the pros and cons to each and every one of these cameras that I have right now. I've got, what, 5, 6 cameras going here, and we're going to basically point these all down kind of the street here, down to a truck at the end of the road, and basically we're going to kind of give samples of all 5 of these cameras, 6 of these cameras, because I'm going to include the LidCam that I'm wearing on my head. So as we're going through all this, I'll just have footage going from the LidCam. Alright, so one by one we are going to cover pros and cons to all these cameras, ranging in some like super cheap handy cams to P.O.V cameras, and then some higher end cameras as well. So like I said, we'll cover each one of these individually and give you pros and cons. If you could just stick around for like 30 seconds, I just want to cover one quick thing here. So when we're out here, we're trying to capture images of nature. And sometimes I think we miss what all this nature is all about. So I just want to go to the Bible, Colossians 1:15, and it says, "He," and let's talk about Christ, Jesus Christ. "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and earth, and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him." Sometimes I think we miss that mark, that we think everything was made for us, and it's not. We were created with a purpose, and our sole purpose is to glorify the Creator. If you've got any questions about what that really means, I'd love to talk more with you about that, so hit me up in the comments down below, or send me an email at jeremyriganoutdoors@gmail.com, and we'll carry on with the rest of the video. So first thing we're going to cover is P.O.V cameras, point of view cameras. Obviously the biggest name in the industry is going to be GoPro. So I've got a couple of GoPros. I've got a GoPro Hero 3 and a Hero 7, I think it is. I think it's a 7. And those are kind of some popular ones. Downside to that, initial cost is fairly expensive if you're going to buy a brand new one. These things can range from $300 to $500, so they're fairly expensive. Let's talk about some of the pros here. You can pick these things up anywhere. If you want to pick them up new on Amazon, or you want to go to Best Buy, you can get those there. You can find some used on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, but you can get these things anywhere. They're small, they're compact, there's tons of accessories. from microphones to add on to them to clips, some large seat clamp style clips where you can clip that onto your saddle, you can clip it onto your tree stand, you can clip it onto a limb. There's all sorts of accessories. You can clip them on your head, your chest, your gun. Like I said, there's all sorts of accessories for these things. So that's another pro. It has a really wide field of view, so you're going to be able to catch a lot of things. You can connect these things to your phone through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. You can connect your phone to it to start and stop recording. They also make remotes. You can have a remote that'll start and stop the recording for those, and this remote can work multiple, I think up to like 6 or 7 GoPros at one time. So that's kind of a cool option. They have good video quality. They can shoot up to 4K, up to I think like 60 frames per second. And the easy part about it is it's generally just a point and shoot. Just click the button. Great for point of view, for second camera angles when you've got a second camera angled at you while you're hunting. So those are some of the pros. Some of the cons, in my opinion, terrible battery life. I hunt here in Michigan where it's fairly cold, and the biggest downfall for me is when I am out hunting, it seems like I can have a brand new freshly charged battery and this thing's just a year or two old, and this year it failed on me after like 15 minutes of recording. Very frustrating. And then there's been other times where I felt that I've pressed record, and then when I go back to review the footage, it is not there. So I've had some glitchiness, and this is, like I said, a fairly brand new camera, bought it brand new. So some glitchiness there. The other downfall is it does have a wide field of view. It's not very focused. So it's a pro and a con. They're fairly expensive, like I said. They're not good in low light, and some of the older models have flashing lights when you're on and recording. There's lights in the front, so if you're trying to have that up in the tree, that could be a distraction, something that deer could see. So a downfall in my book. Generally I try to have electrical tape covering those things, and so that they can't be seen. So those are some of the pros and cons of the GoPros. And I'm not even going to talk about Tacticam. I've never owned a Tacticam, but my personal opinion on a bow mounted or gun mounted camera is just that it's a very little use in my book, because you end up with this shaky footage generally after the shot that camera angle's forgotten about, and you get very lousy footage from it. So the one I have used a lot is called the LidCam. This is another P.O.V. camera, point of view camera, that you can clip onto the brim of your hat. So you simply just slide this thing on and then turn this thing on and you're good to go. And speaking of hats, today we are wearing Michigan Ambush Outdoors. Great YouTube channel, fellow Michigander. Check him out. He's got lots of great content, lots of great reviews and hunting content. So check him out. So back to the LidCam. So it clips onto your hat, and it serves as a point of view camera, and it takes video and photos. You can connect this thing through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, sorry, to your phone, and you can start recording that way. Or there's the power button and the record button underneath here. The other cool feature of this thing that I really like is it has a headlamp, built-in headlamp. So that way you can use this thing. A lot of times we're already wearing a headlamp anyway, so you put this thing on, great for walking in and out of the woods, and you just turn it on and off. So shoots some pretty good video footage. I've used it, like I said, several times through the last couple of years, and I really like it. So it's small, it's compact. Here's some of the cons to this though. It can be glitchy. There's been times where I just had a hard time getting this thing to record. The other bad side to it is every time you move your head, that video is moving. Whereas, you know, if you had one of these and it's clamped on in the tree, it's staying exactly where you put it. So the other problem is it's kind of a one-trick pony. It clips on your hat and that's it. If you're not wearing a hat, if you don't like to wear hats, if you don't wear hats while you're hunting, this is kind of useless to you, because there are no other mounting screws or adapters or anything for this. So it's kind of a one-trick pony. So that's kind of some of the P.O.V. cameras, and we'll move on from there. All right, this is my Canon T3i, and it is kind of a camera that is made more for picture taking, but does take video. So some of the pros to it, you can pick one of these things up used for probably under $300. New, you can spend more, but also there's much newer models, but this is the model that I have and that I want to talk about. So this thing shoots great video quality with one caveat, if you know what you're doing, because I can tell you I struggle with it all the time. I end up shooting video with it and finding out later that it's out of focus, and I'm not a photography guy, so it takes great pictures. Here's some of the other pros. You can add a monitor to this thing because it has a flip out screen, a very small flip out screen here that you can use, but sometimes it's really hard to see if that's in focus or not just based on this little screen. So you can add a monitor to it if you need to. Also, obviously you can add a microphone. It's got a shoe up here, a hot shoe. It's medium size. It does weigh a little bit. Maybe I'll probably throw in some of the weights. But you can pick one of these things up for under 300 bucks. You can get multiple sizes lenses that obviously just kind of easily detach. So you can zoom in. This comes stock with the 18 to 55 lens, but you can get other zoom lenses and other wide angle lenses, all sorts of stuff like that. You can shoot video in 30 to 60 frames per second. There's tons of accessories for this thing. This lens does have image stabilization, which I guess I didn't even realize in a few of the videos I've been shooting that I could have been using that. But overall, it's a great camera, good starter camera. But let's talk about some of the cons. Con number one is you really need to learn a lot about these cameras because of all the things that you can and can't do with them. Because these things are designed more for pictures, but they do shoot video, and they do shoot some good video. You just kind of got to learn it. It isn't like a point and shoot camera where you can just click the button and it's recording. It doesn't. Here's the other thing for me, and I know some of the newer cameras will. This thing has what they call autofocus, but in order to do that autofocus, we'll turn this thing on. Once you are kind of zoomed in where you want to be, you have to hold this down, and what you're going to hear is this thing finally focusing in. So it's fairly loud if you're in the woods. For around the house, no big deal, but if you're using this for hunting, it's a fairly loud focus, and it only focuses in on that point. So let's say you've got a deer at 50 yards and you focus in on that. Once he moves 5 to 10 yards out of that range, that deer is no longer in focus, and you're not going to have good footage of that. So I do find that to be an issue. The video, like I said, often for me ends up out of focus because I'm self-filming. Even when I'm shooting videos like this, I'm self-filming. I don't have a crew here. So I kind of try to get to a point where I think it's in focus, and then I look on the screen and it looks fairly good, and then after I look at the video, I'm all out of focus. So that's some of the downfalls of this camera. But overall, it does pretty well. It's a decent beginner camera. As you heard, even turning it off though, it makes some decent noise. So, all right. So we're ready to talk about our next camera. And I know you're probably wondering, like, what are we looking at? What are we reviewing? Well, we're going to be reviewing your phone. I think your phone nowadays could be the ultimate camera to use. Here's some of the pros. Here's a pro. You probably already have one of these. And if you've gotten a new phone in the last year or two, it's got some great cameras built into it. I have the Samsung, I don't know what it is, S21 Ultra. This thing's got 4 cameras with night vision on it. It's ridiculous. The cameras have gotten so good, and there's a lot of pros to this. It's lightweight, it's compact, it's something you're already taking with you out into the woods anyway. So you're adding no extra weight, you're adding no extra cost because you've already bought this thing for your own use. Another cool feature about these things, most of these newer ones are pretty much waterproof. So you don't have to worry about covering it up or anything like that when you're out in the rain and out in the weather. It's probably going to be able to handle that no problem. So that's a cool thing that a lot of people I don't think about. You can add microphones to these things. You can get an external mic. This microphone right here Has an 1/8 inch adapter on it, and this can, if you get the correct adapter to plug into the phone, you can use this. So they make cages that you could mount on your phone and then mount this thing. So that is super cool that you can add that. I think there's lots of accessories you can buy for these things, as well as you could hang this thing. I have a review on a thing called the dangle case. I've used that before to actually hold the cell phone and use it kind of on selfie mode to be a second angle camera. I know my buddy Travis at Shedding Light Outdoors, he has done that before, used his phone as a second angle camera. So it's kind of cool little feature that you can use your phone. And this phone, I tell you what, is really good in low light situations. I've used that before and been able to actually see almost better through the phone than I was with my own eyes. So let's talk about some of the cons, I guess, of it. Right now, there's no remote for it. I have not seen one. I've got to imagine someone's got to be coming out with something that you can plug in and use it as a remote, like you would use on your bigger cameras, like your Sony. On the Sony AX53, I have a remote that sits on my pan head, so you can turn the power on and off, zoom in and out, start and stop recording. So it will be really cool to have that, because with these, obviously you guys know you have to be touching the screen to record, touching the screen to zoom in or out, and that's kind of a downfall of it. And they don't have built-in image stabilization, so you kind of get what there's some trade-offs for sure for this compact size, but overall I think it's super cool to just film with your phone. It's a super budget-minded way because you've already purchased your phone and you don't need to buy another camera. So that's going over phones. Alright, so this is my Sony AX53, and the price point on this thing, you can get one of these for probably around $650, $700 used. If you want to buy it new, it's going to cost you probably $1,000 to $1,100. So some of the pros of this thing is you can obviously, it's got a hot shoe here, so you can just flip this up and you can add your microphone to it, no problem. It has a decent built-in microphone as well, but this is a little bit better for when you want focus the microphone into one specific area. It has zoom in and out. It also has a photo button for that. It does have a viewfinder, although I guess I've never used it, but it has this flip out LCD screen. It's a touch screen as well. So you can use that to scroll through the menu buttons and stuff like that. This thing can shoot in 120 frames per second. And the cool part about it is it's just kind of a point and shoot camera. You don't have to get fancy and zoom in and out and focus and get the right adjustments, but you can just hit the record button. The cool part is it does have a manual focus ring here, so you can click this manual button, scroll through the menus, and use this focus ring to make adjustments. It also has image stabilization using a gimbal, so that's really cool. So there's lots and lots of accessories for it. You can get like a sun shield here to cut down on glare and things like that. Some of the cons is it is a bigger, bulkier camera. It's definitely the biggest, bulkiest camera that I have. I know they make bigger and bulkier, but overall, this thing has some great, you're able to take some great footage. You're able to zoom in extremely far and get some great video. Does low light. It also has night vision capabilities on it. It's got an IR light on it, and you can just turn that on to night mode, and it does pretty well there too. So hopefully I've given you guys some good options. Well, thanks for sticking around through this video. Hopefully you've gotten something out of it. If you did, if you've gotten anything out of this, please consider subscribing down below. I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you could give it a thumbs up, a share, a comment down below. Tell me what camera you're taking out into the woods with you this year. Well, thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time.